Well, welcome, space lovers. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad you've joined us at the American Space Museum, where we bring you Stay Curious afternoons, Monday through Friday. And we love our guests. And one guy that was here long before I am here is our guest today, Bob Castro. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Mark. Pleasure
I
as
spit
always.
that out okay. You showed up here at the museum probably 10 years ago?
More like 20.
More like 20.
Yeah,
Okay.
back when it was at Searstown Mall
Oh, my
a couple of
gosh.
locations ago.
And
Uh,
what brought you here? How'd you find us?
well, it was Johnny Johnson, who used
Okay.
to be the deputy base commander at Cape Canaveral,
Yep.
and he introduced me to the to Mark Pinchel, the pretty much the founder of the Apollo 1 memorial ceremony,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the other folks in the on the space base and the kind of the memorial movement to try to remember our fallen astronauts. And then he subtly suggested, in a way that wasn't so subtle, that because he was volunteering here before it was here at this location, that I ought to come along. And
Mm.
once I did, that's all she wrote.
Well, Mr. Johnson's a legend out there at Cape Canaveral. He embraced it as his own place
Mhm.
and knew it like the back of his hand and passed away about 3 years ago, I think, right?
It's more like six.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was one of the delivered one of the eulogies. In my first meeting with him, he said, "I'm always curious who's nosing around my cape."
Yeah,
So I had to
yeah.
kind of present myself and say, "Why do you deserve to be here?"
And those are the type of people that really took it to heart that America was going to space and all that was involved with it on there. Yeah, Bob's been around for, like he says, over 20 years, and the foundation, U.S. Space Walk of Fame, founded in the mid 1990s to preserve the birth of America's space age by first collecting the handprints in bronze
Mhm,
of astronauts.
mhm.
And Bob has since become an archivist and helps preserve all kinds of video medium, whether it be film or movie
Mag-
film.
magnetic tape.
All right, magnetic tape. We'll
Yeah.
talk more about that here
Hmm.
on there. And we've gone through a interesting, of course, NASA's darkest week. You know, the three tragedies all
Yeah.
within the same week. And here it is, January 30th, 2025.
Hmm.
And you and I have attended some of those ceremonies. We're going to
Hmm.
look at again, take a look at the Apollo 1 through a few pictures you took here at
Hmm.
the end. And as I talk about a couple of things, just chime in on it there.
Okay.
We're gonna first talk about a couple of our events and an event I was at yesterday, SpaceCom in Orlando. And we want to say hi to Mitch Rothman, who's in Central Florida. Hi, Mitch, great friend of our museum. Hello from Tasmania, says Colin Vandemark. Love the space program. Thank you, Colin. Tasmania now joins our roles here. Dean Babcock's up in Illinois. So is this Steve Jokums? He says, hi, Mark, Marty, Bob, and the entire Stay Curious gang from Fox Lake, Illinois. Good Thursday afternoon, says Carlton Bailey. Looking forward to an interesting show. And Carlton's going to come on tomorrow
Mm.
and Friday. And his first rocket launch as a professional was the Challenger disaster.
Mm.
And he's going to recount his personal uh, memories of that. And Bob Mayran, thank you. Good afternoon from Miami, Bob. Well, we're getting a lot of new people, and that's my way to say hi to Marty Winkle, our producer over there on the Streamlabs board. Marty, we are getting quite a few new people there. And you were on, uh, say hello on that UCX family microphone.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Bob.
You were talking to Trekkie Techie today. She bailed us out of another jam, quick jam there. This is not as easy as it looks every day, is it, Marty?
No, but this little problem, I should have known it. I should have fixed it myself.
Okay. Well, we won't hold your feet to the fire because we're grateful that you're here every day as a
Mhm.
volunteer. He's one of the
Mhm.
greatest volunteers this museum's ever had, which is saying a lot. You've done a
Yeah,
lot of good volunteers here,
that's right.
haven't you?
And veteran as well of the program. But I just was very impressed by Colonel Johnson, the lieutenant colonel at that time, because he not only did his job and he did it very well. He flew various aircraft in the Air Force, and then because of his experience using range operations at Warner Robins, when President Carter was in office,
Mm-hmm.
Warner Robins was the closest Air Force base to get the planes. So he started working liaison with the Secret Service, and really got to know how to operate a complex range with a lot of traffic. And then, unfortunately, after the Challenger disaster, when they had all these different submarines and recovery aircraft and so on, they needed someone who was good at staging all those assets. And so Johnny was called in to help spearhead that and make sure that all the trailers from all the different, some of them were private companies that had undersea experience, others were government assets, and made sure that they all got what they needed and were able to get the job done.
Talking about another hidden figure legend of the space
Mhm.
program, Johnny Johnson.
Yeah.
And we've Bob was on February 1st last year, because you're here around the Apollo 1 celebration. I call it celebration now because we celebrate their lives.
Yes,
though,
indeed.
though it is a memorial, and all the silver linings that came out of that horrible tragedy. So I'm going to show you a little bit of SpaceCom in Orlando. We're going to talk about some upcoming events. We're having a space memorabilia show February 22nd, 2025 at Beachside Hotel. Free admission, free appraisals, okay? We don't have an astronaut book. We're close to getting one every time we do this for a book signing, and Jan Davis said she'll do it one time. We do these in February and November. Get the snowbirds coming and going, but what kind of memorabilia you have, Bob?
Oh my goodness. Well, my favorite, the person I wanted to meet as a space kid growing up in Miami during the Apollo program and having all my space toys in front of the TV set when we would go somewhere to a planet or to the moon or whatever. I, of course, admired and followed the astronauts, as we all did. But then reading up about it and actually then meeting some of the space veterans, the person that really stood out for me was Gene Kranz, the legendary flight director. And so he came up to a speaking engagement in Atlanta, and eventually my wife wanted to meet him as well. So she got him to agree to have breakfast with us before he went on. So so I took along a copy of the Apollo 11 flight plan, which Bob Special from RCA, the famous photographer, who took the picture of Vanguard 1 exploding on the launch pad, and Glenn and Shepard getting in their spacecraft, and the famous Gemini 10 multiple exposure. Remember when I was here in 2020, you did a little segment on that. He had given me this Apollo 11 flight plan. So I produced it for Mr. Kranz to ask a question and make a point. And even though this thing is a telephone book-sized document, he flipped immediately to the exact page and made the point that he needed to make with it. So he honored me by autographing it.
Wow.
So I'd have to say that having an autographed copy of the Apollo 11 flight plan by Gene Kranz is pretty much it.
Does it have the pink cover on it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, we've
Yes,
got
it
one
does.
in our
Yes, it
gallery
does.
in
Yeah.
there. You've seen in there. Yeah,
That's right.
Well, that is a valuable piece of real estate there. Hello, Robert Law from Dundee, Scotland. Marty, Robert Law's booked his flight and hotel for Shuttlefest. So I hope you're hoisting a cocktail. Here's my vodka and cranberry juice. Not really, but Robert, can't wait to see you. You seem like a lost brother to me. So, and he's probably watched 900 of our
Really?
1,200 episodes, maybe even more than that. Tommy Usiak's watching. He said, "Good afternoon. Johnny Johnson was 1 in a million, an excellent escort."
Yep.
And Gary Gerald, hello to everyone from Collins, Georgia. And Bill Whiting, hope you're feeling better, Bob. And Doug Forrest is there in Pasadena, California area up there. So hope the wildfires have dimmed down. Haven't heard that much about that. So here's what we're talking about, that you're going to meet the very famous Robert Law. Robert, I'm excited about that for you, as you are. Shuttlefest 4. What do you think about our lineup there, Bob?
It's a very strong bench, and I'm sure that no one will come away dissatisfied, because that's living history right there. The folks who have gone into space and made it look easy.
Well, we got Chris Calley, artist, Mike Leinbach, Jay Honeycutt, author Jonathan Ward, Mark Usiak will be there, author David Chudwin, Emily Carney, Space Hipster #1, KSC's Nick Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got and adding Jim Niehaus. Do you know Jim Niehaus is the godfather of the IMAX camera?
I
I
didn't know that.
understand.
Really?
He
Oh,
lives in Rockledge. He's going to be part of
wow.
Tommy Usiak's panel on photography. And the panels are going to merge into one, I think, because we got so many astronauts that want to be part of it.
Sure.
I'm talking to Joe Tanner. He's booked his flight, and he's excited to come and be with Mikey Haddad and Scott Bongan, the other Level 4 guys
Mm-hmm.
out there that helped them. The Level 4 guys showed the EVA walkers where the tools were going to be in the bay,
Okay.
payload bay. So John Grunsfeld, Don Thomas, of course, Eileen Collins, all confirmed to be here. So tickets are starting to sell fast. We're limiting it to 125 people because of the size of the hotel. This will undoubtedly be at a Cocoa Beach Hilton or larger hotel in future years. But we love the Hyatt Place and Dana and all her staff there. Sarah, we're looking forward to having a wonderful Hubble Hugger Saturday and then a cool Sunday of astronauts. So let me tell you about SpaceCom. The 51st Space Congress. The Space Congress was a trade show. Did you ever go to those? There's over 50 of them. It was a real center point for the industry people here. And they met at one of the hotels at Cocoa Beach or
That's
Cape
my-
Canaveral.
Yeah, I didn't because I don't think I could get in, being an outsider and someone kind of in the press or news
Right.
area, but without a working press credential.
Yeah.
So, I didn't-
Well, maybe not, but you could. I think people off the street or in a whatever discipline could come. But yes, it's a trade show at the Orlando Convention Center. That is a huge facility. This is Commercial Space Week. They celebrate. And here's a few of the, it's all about what you see these gentlemen doing, just fellowship, meeting a lot of people, networking. There's a lot of trade show booths there, networking things from 3D modeling to, there was one of the companies had, it sat on the table, a booster that could elevate a satellite in space.
Okay.
Like a PAM
Right.
or a IUS from the shuttle days. So there just gives you a flavor. People walking around, bumping into each other. Beautiful backdrop there that this was taken at the Apollo 1 the other night. And
That's
Marty,
right.
thank you for choosing that background there.
Yeah.
Space prep and all points. Thank you for, excuse me, getting my credential to go with the museum. It's a 3-day event, but after one day, I've done my rounds. I made my appearance, and being part of a nonprofit, I think I stuck out, as you'll see here in a minute. There's again a little flavor of it. We're where integration ignites innovation. Okay, and that integration has a dual meaning, I think, with integrating all aspects of society as well as integrating your guidance and navigation with your hardware, so
That's
forth
right.
like that. It's
That's
a
right.
very play on words. There is my friends Sid Champagne and Jim Lewis, both Colcom Award winners. And I'm honored to be now in that circle, a small circle of educators and communicators. There's the equipment we need, Marty, behind us there. About a $10,000 setup there probably with the stuff there. But we can dream. But good to see them there. And good to see Steve Lloyd there and Laura Mayo of BRPH. Those are the legacy initials of the gentleman that started this firm, architectural design. They do everything from launch pads to school cafeterias type of thing. And Steve's on our board, and you'll be seeing Miss Mayo there on a future Stay Curious, as she is the human resources person for this big company. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about who they're looking for to hire and you know, what skills do you need, and from being whatever there. So,
Wow.
and you know, when you're a nonprofit, you got to stick out. So there I am. NASA had a lunar rover there. That I'll show you the details, Marty. Went on my phone I took of the console. It's quite detailed. I'd love to show it to Charlie Duke someday
Yeah.
and ask him if it's accurate. So,
Mm-hmm.
and Cyan Proctor there, astronaut on the Inspiration 4. She sat right here in that chair about a year ago. We had a great talk with her. She remembered the museum, and she knows our executive director, Gabriel Rothblatt, and another one of our friends, Sean Graham of the Earthlight Foundation there. So she's a classy lady with awesome eye for art, and it was a pleasure talking to her a little bit. And that's what it is. I only talked to 6 astronauts. No, I think I talked to 4 astronauts, and Andy Aldrin was there, Buzz Aldrin's son. He gave an interesting talk on the what orbits satellite orbits are the most profitable. Low Earth orbit, geosynchronous orbit, somewhere in between. And he knows his stuff about the dollars behind the payloads. And you can say, I want to put something in geosynchronous orbit, but then your expenses are like triple what they are with the low Earth orbit.
Right.
And is it easier to put something in low Earth orbit and then pay a company to raise it up maybe years later to geosynchronous orbit? So Andy Aldrin, I don't have a picture of him, but he fascinated some of the crowd there. So just wanted to show you that's what I do as the executive, as the director of our museum here. Same way with Gabriel, our executive director. We're out there beating the bushes and showing up at some of these events to make a difference in our nonprofit on the behalf of you all, so that we can continue broadcast and stay curious and offering this high quality museum. You've been in this museum many, many times in its incarnations.
Yes.
Tell everybody what you think about it.
It's a very compact museum. There's not a lot of wasted space. I mean, there isn't. It kind of reminds you of a spacecraft, because in like a Gemini spacecraft or even Apollo, every cubic inch had to be of its proper purpose. And so whether it's the across the hall from us, the women in space room, or the ones on either side, it's very well planned and thought out. And I do recall there was, Karen had said that there was a European visitor who, of course, Europe is no stranger to having lots of wonderful museums. And they were very complimentary of the design and the layout of your museum here. So I would definitely echo that compliment.
Well, thank you. Nick Enix, our collection manager, is responsible for that. Good job, Nick. We're on the Past Perfect and all the tools that Smithsonian uses as a template for other museums out there. And though we are a bit of a hand-me-down museum, in our display cases were former jewelry cases at that mall, Sears Point Mall, and the Penny's Mall that they were at. So
one advantage of that is that usually the build quality is quite good, and usually the lighting is quite good, because you want to show off the gemstones. So I would say encourage people to come to the museum and see exactly how good the exhibits do look on display.
And we've got some one-of-a-kind things you'll never see anywhere else, right, Bob?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
the consoles are one of my favorite.
Yeah.
All wired up and running in synchronization to let you see shuttle operations as they would have been. And those are the actual consoles that were there in the firing room.
On the fueling station, then we have actual consoles that were in pads 14, 36, back in our Cape Canaveral galleries. So, well, let's talk about Bob. Here's a picture a few years ago at one of our storage facilities, and Bob's opening up a can there of film, and Bob's going to help you out a little bit. You got your family memories on that VHS tape, maybe beta tape if you're like my dad. Of course, I went with 8 tracks over cassette also. And then you have cards laying around, memory cards, and DVDs and CDs. How long is that stuff really going to last?
Oh my goodness. Well, not as long as we would like it to last.
So it does have a lifetime.
It does, and there's been a lot of work done in trying to identify the choke points. The company I work for, Cinepost, just outside Atlanta, called Marietta, Georgia.
I just happen to have their banner here.
There you go. So we can handle classic media, whether it's chemical motion picture film, the kind that has holes running up and down the side, as you see here, or magnetic recordings, such as videotapes and audio tapes, and convert them to whichever file format in the computer domain you wish. But the work is not over, because then you have, and there's a lot of work that has been done in the industry to try to migrate digital data from whatever the newest format is to subsequent ones, because whether they be spinning hard drive platters or written onto optical media such as CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, etc., they do have a shelf life, and so you have to be very diligent about moving on. These are some views of our facility. One of the things that makes us different is that we use broadcast equipment. We use 6- and 7-figure equipment to do our work, and if I do say so myself, we do very good work. There in the left corner is one of the...
Well, you 6- and 7-figure. You're saying hundreds of thousands to $1 million equipment costs?
When they were first developed, yes. Now, because the industry has moved on to what's called born digital, meaning digital recording, those original classic formats aren't as used as much. Now, there's some aficionados. You remember last year, the Oppenheimer film was actually shot on chemical film, because Christopher Nolan likes the aesthetics of it, and there is something to
Regular cellular.
appeal to. Yes, exactly. It has a different aesthetic to it, and so we have the ability to work with those older formats. But recognizing that the trend of the industry is to go in the digital direction, so that it's important to be able to maintain the memory, if you will, about how to work that, and we do. And one of the things we have on our scanner back there is a custom-made liquid system. So we actually bathe the film prior to it being scanned, and then it dries as it takes up in the background. And so that enables us to fill in scratches that are what are called base scratches, and wash the film before it gets transferred. So it makes it look pretty darn good.
Here's an example of a before and after cleanup of color and what I would call foxing on paper.
Well, that is a mold or fungus, because gelatin is a food stuff to these microorganisms. Sometimes they decide to nibble on your memories.
Okay.
And so, not always, but sometimes we can treat those. It depends on the actual species of the organism, to be able to reduce them to the point that it's still a watchable image. I consider us to be the kind of ICU or even hospice of motion picture film. Because
hospice, hear that, Marty? That's interesting.
Well, unfortunately we have
hospice of motion picture film. Yeah.
Some clients have waited too long, and they send us in films, and they have rather than being flexible and plasticky and able to run, they have the consistency of dried leaves, and they just crack on us. And unfortunately, very little can be done at that stage. We have had extreme conditions where the client is really desperate for what was, if I can use this as an example.
Yeah.
This is a roll of 35 millimeter still film, and you can see that it's supple, and it's curls and runs through the camera, and then would run through processing equipment and then scanning equipment. But if it's so brittle that it can't fit through the gears and mechanisms, we've actually put the film up and taken still photos of individual frames. To be able to try to recover what we can, because it's like hanging out over a cliff by a thread, and if that thread breaks, it goes into oblivion, and so we're like the last chance to try to save some of the.
I have this because I'm so old. I want probably people under 40, maybe under 30, never even seen a cartridge for film, so I have that handy when we talk about our Apollo guys doing an EVA to get the film on 15, 16, and 17 and all that. We got some great viewers here watching Bob Castro. If you got a question for him about your family memories or such. Dave Stangy says happy Thursday to us all. Doug Forrest says that lunar rover looked like the 1G trainer, and I believe it was, that the astronauts used. Alina Adakari, thank you, Alina, for watching today. Robert Law has his VHS tapes from the 80s still play perfect, and he's still recording space on VHS.
I know, because some people have taken to, there are some young people especially who have rediscovered film, and they shoot chemical film because to them it's new. They grew up in the digital age, so they like the organic nature. It has an aesthetic and a luminosity and a quality to the light that some people don't detect or don't care about. But once you recognize it, once you really see it, you go, yes, I would like to have something that is of that world. And so by the same token, retro gamers like CRT glass CRT monitors, cathode ray tubes, and even the older recording technology like good old VHS and 8mm video and so on.
Well, Robert Law's still into that, and it's also, I see a lot in the industry. Since we're talking to an industry leader here of this, I see a lot of colorization of old movies, and even black and white photographs are being colorized on there. Do you do a lot of that?
No, we do not. What we follow the rule of, like, the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. We handle all the materials as they are in their original state. Now, some of them will start to chemically decompose. For example, the film you're holding right there is the film record of the Apollo 7 mission in October 1968. The first, basically, it was the reflight of Apollo 1. It was the checkout of the command service module in Earth orbit. Wally Schirra, Don Isley, and Walt Cunningham orbited the Earth for 11 days.
Now, did you restore this for us?
Yes, you did.
That's your numbering on there.
Yes, and
here's some other archives things that you've restored.
that's right.
But when I open this tin can,
Yes,
okay,
brace yourself. Even the people at home.
and oh my God, well, yeah, you can probably smell it through the camera there.
Be grateful this
Marty,
is not.
you smell it over there yet?
Be grateful it's not smell-o-vision.
Will.
It's called the vinegar syndrome, and that's what happens when you have chemical decomposition take place on the film substrate, the base. The important thing to note is that the color will sometimes fade asymmetrically. So a lot of times you'll have it look very kind of reddish, not kind of, it'll look very reddish or pinkish. All right, so when we transfer it and scan it, we will correct as much as we can. Sometimes we can get pretty impressive results. Other times less so, to bring it back to the original color it was when it was shot. And we use some pretty sophisticated forensics to try to figure out what it actually looked like. But what we don't do is we don't put in fake color. We don't put in colors that like colorization of black and white photos. Other people will do that, and that's fine. But we want to present back to the client is this is as faithful a representation of what we think the film looked like when it was young. And that's our dividing line. So,
Marty, you had a comment on that UCX family microphone.
So only put it back in the can because I can smell it.
Yeah, really.
yeah, in extreme.
What's the little sausage that you chew in the sticks?
I don't do that, but you talk about Slim Jims?
Slim Jims. Doesn't that look like a Slim Jim, Marty?
It does, yeah.
It looks like the skin of a Slim Jim. It is so brittle.
Yeah.
And thank God we got it to Bob in time.
That's right.
To preserve this. And this is on our, I think Bruce Jacobs, our IT guy, this is where you can see some of these things on our archives there.
Yeah, right there in the middle, it says 1978 Dr. Guion Bluford, first African American in space. That film was particularly faded. It looked like you were just looking through a red filter. There was very little color and composition left. And my colleague, the senior colorist at CinePost, John Kuhn, really did an outstanding job pulling out the inherent colors that were there and basically reversing the decomposition.
Dave Stangy's got a question. Do you know Mark Gray and done any work with him?
I haven't worked with him, but I own lots of his products, Spacecraft Films and Mighty Saturns and all those other wonderful series that he made.
That tell us who Mark Gray is for those people.
Well, he had an, I don't want to speak for him, but from my understanding of reading about his story is that he made whatever arrangements to be able to get all of the footage from the National Archives or get access to it, get copies of it for things like the Saturn 1B rockets and then the various space missions, Apollo to the moon, Skylab, and so on. So for real space aficionados such as us, he would produce these multi-disc DVD sets that would have not just the regular coverage that everybody out in the general public would have seen, but the engineering views, the different views of launch or surface operations or whatever. So it was a lot of detective work, and I commend him very highly, and I own lots of his discs, and I look forward to speaking with him directly and thanking him in person.
There's a couple others there, and it talks their historical space program project. They're on the left, and it mentions the special thanks to Bob Castro, Myron Lewinsky of Cinepost Films and Video Restoration of Marietta, Georgia. There, and so yes, you've got some archives of your family or something you want saved there. Do not delay doing that. You will regret it.
The one thing I would recommend is even if you don't choose us, choose somebody this year, this season, and hurry. Because the equipment that transports that machine is that kind of film. Those machines are no longer made. And so the amount of spare parts are dwindling. And because it's an all mechanical process, just like automobile parts, they do wear out. And there'll come a time, not too terribly long, I don't think, when that'll be hardware encrypted. It'll become more and more difficult to transfer these older and older materials. And we regularly run into that where there are urgent requests for the services, and there have been a few times we've had to say no, it's too late. So as I say, it is a commitment, and we don't just do scientific and engineering films. We do some theatrical films and entertainment films. We do people's home collections and home movies with sound or not, and with color or black and white. But your window of opportunity is closing, and the first passengers, the first lifeboats that left the Titanic were not full because the passengers did not believe the ship was sinking. By the time even they were convinced it really was, it was literally a lifetime too late for that decision.
Wow, that's an interesting way to put it. Carlton Bailey, CB, says on regular film, he sees watermarks or burst bubbles, maybe stuck to a negative holder. Could those be restored?
Doing it for still is a very different suite of products than doing it for motion. The answer is partially is yes, but it does require a partial form of reprocessing the film, because when film in the dark would be exposed, it was exposed to light in the camera, it's exposed to chemicals in processing. And then the development, and during the development stage, and the development has to be stopped using what's called stop bath, and then it has to be fixed so that it won't change any further. And so it is possible to go back into those processes and introduce certain chemicals to try to free up, to replace the water molecules there, and perhaps get that back. But you have to understand that is kind of like archaeology. Archaeology is a destructive science. As you dig things up, you are destroying the stratigraphy of where things are located and also the chronology. And we cannot guarantee results. So once you go into a roll of film, we will be as diligent as we can. But you have to consider it to be a one-time only effort to restore.
Very good. Well, anything else you want to share about this restoration process? It applies to our fans out there.
Well, as someone who, when I first started in television, TV stations had film departments. So that's where I learned to cut and splice motion picture film and record sound on a Nagra tape recorder and so on. So we're currently working on a project for a entertainment team's 50th anniversary. That's having to use all the experience that I had when I was back in college. So for me, it's very rewarding to be able to make a contribution, pulling from the past, working in the present to send on to the future. And that's very rewarding for me.
Very good. Cinepost, their website is
www.posthouse.com.
posthouse.com. So let your boss know that he can put your name on the back of a $50 bill and send it to me, and we'll thank them
Yeah.
again on that. Okay. Wonderful. Let's. This man is a great photographer. I'm talking about Bob here, not Marty. And we've seen you. I met you in so many interesting circumstances. None more fun for me than this guy, Don Arabian, with the nickname Mad Don Arabian.
Yes.
He was another hidden figures. He was the ombudsman at Johnson Space Center. Every flight, he was in the bullpen of solving problems as they come up.
It was called the Mission Evaluation Room, and outside of NASA, it's not as well known as what is called Mission Control, although they called it the Mission Operations Control Room, or MOCR. But the Mission Evaluation Room was a unique place. As Don himself said, we didn't need any fancy darn consoles. It was a room much like where you're seeing there, with all these church tables kind of lined up,
Yeah.
and monitors, television monitors up around the ceiling,
And telephones everywhere.
and telephones, and people with binoculars, looking at the status of the systems. But it was a room designed to
Looking at binoculars. Wait a minute.
yeah, in other words, if you're at one end of the room in the monitor, which is a certain number of inches,
for data.
yeah, for data, so, you would be looking at it for trying to decode the numbers for telemetry and system status.
So you might have birding glasses or
That's
something.
right,
with
exactly,
you there. Really?
exactly. But they had to troubleshoot problems from as much as 250,000 miles away
Oh, yeah.
in real time, and it had to work. So you can easily imagine that Apollo 13 was a very, very busy time for them.
Well, you recorded him and some history of them.
That's right.
Is that still in your library, or have you ever done anything with it?
It is. I'm actually, and I've alluded to this in my previous visits. I've spent some time now because of my involvement with the Apollo 1 Memorial, and Johnny Johnson introducing me to Roland Miller, who's a noted space photographer.
Yes.
I've been working on a documentary about the original launch sites of the early program and the men and women who designed, built, and operated those structures.
Roland Miller's of the Abandoned series.
Yes,
right?
Abandoned in Place.
Yeah.
It's
Where's he live?
He retired out to Utah. He and his wife are out there, and
Love to have him on here. He was featured many times out there for his photography.
that's right.
But he's famous for Abandoned in Place, LC 34 photograph he took out there. You got any questions? Let us know. Does Bob have a social media presence? Asked Mitch Rothman.
That's coming.
Okay.
In other words, I've learned from being around people who do that you can either be outward facing, which has merits, or you can actually be inward facing and get the scholarship done. And for me, the imperative has been that we are losing so many of these veterans every day. And so the chance to speak to them and to freeze their memories in recordings has really predominated for me. So that's why I've chosen to emphasize getting the raw material, and it's now it's several hundred hours worth of
You've got a
material.
lot of famous people. You got a lot of interesting interviews.
That's right.
And some of them have passed away since you talked to them, like Mr. Lee Solid, and Murphy Wardman, and
Gunter Wendt, and Sam Bedingfield, and Jay Barbary, and numerous others. But I will let you know that when I do go to an outward-facing social media, I will probably be featuring it here on your program.
Well, great.
So,
we can look forward to that.
That's right.
Obviously. Marty, you'll remember this. This was the Artemis 1 launch attempt in August 22.
22, yeah.
And, that was the best scrub I've ever attended.
You're right, because I followed the preparations for that, and the news accounts of saying there's going to be so many people in Brevard County, you're not going to be able to move, there's not going to be services, gridlock, and what the sheriff's department was saying and so on. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to have to camp out. I'm just going to have to go down there and be prepared to stay out in the park, the afternoon, that night, and into the next day. And in doing so, and I set up my equipment, kids particularly would come up and ask me questions, and I would try to answer them as well as I could. And it went, and probably there was a couple thousand, maybe 3 or 4,000 people in this Spaceview Park that's
Yeah.
there. And the electricity, the excitement in those days is what I imagine it would have been seeing a Saturn V launch back in the
Yeah.
60s.
Yeah.
I only ever saw
You
them
and
on
I
TV.
can only imagine.
Yeah,
But Marty's
never got to see one. Yeah.
Marty, you got the
Yeah.
arrow?
Yeah, I'm trying to use the arrow, but arrow's not working. I
Okay.
Do a circle.
Who are you going to point to?
I think it's Tom UCI.
Oh,
No, it's not working.
Tom over there?
Isn't that Tom?
Not sure. No, I don't. That actually looked like Bill Whiting more, but
No.
anyway, there's the big condos and the
Mhm.
bridge going over to Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge, Indian
Mhm.
River, and though it got scrubbed that morning,
Mhm.
people there all night. Marty was interviewed by the German TV stations.
me too. Me too.
And you too, yeah.
Yeah.
They had 2 German stations there.
Yeah.
We still in touch with them.
That's great.
There was a great group of people there. And
And don't forget the Rocket Hobo providing all the launch
That's right.
amplification.
God bless Ozzy Osbourne.
That's right.
That's not Tom?
Maybe that is Tom. Don't recognize shorts on that Pennsylvania guy there, but
Tom is watching, so Tom, is that you?
Tommy's go. We have Joe. There's Chris Callie's on there. Hello, Chris. Using his wife Jacqueline's cover there, and so thank you for joining us today. There's Bob out at you see the blast
Mm-hmm. The flame deflectors.
deflectors from
Yeah.
pad 34 in the background there. I was very, very honored that you asked me the first time I went out there
Yes.
to go out there with the Apollo 1
Mm-hmm.
in the Apollo 1 bus.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a beautiful, that was a full moon rising.
Mhm.
Remember that
Oh,
in the
yes.
background? And this week was the 3rd time I've been out there. So
Mhm.
it is a privilege every time. I don't know if I'll ever be invited again, but the Astronaut Memorial Foundation
Mm-hmm.
has done the last 2 events.
That's
here.
right. And the-
Marty?
That is Tom.
Oh, that is Tom in the background. Okay. All right. There he is back there. Right above my head there. There you go, Tom. And I'm sure he'll agree it was really an interesting night. They scrubbed it early in the morning and then launched it in November.
Mm-hmm. I was back down there for that one. That
Yeah.
was quite impressive.
Yeah. Well, it's we need that impressive equipment like that for our Stay Curious program.
The reason there's a mask hanging off my right ear is because that was 2020.
Yeah.
And I called down there fully expecting them, the Air Force, to say no, the ceremony's canceled this year. But they said no, we're going to go for it. I theorize it's because being outdoors gave enough space and air circulation that it wouldn't be a problem.
Yep. That was would have been January 2021. Yeah, because March 2020.
Yeah, that's right.
when-
That's right. Yeah, January
when,
21. That's correct.
In there, but still,
Yeah.
great. Anyway, it was like when I saw you. I was happy to see you because I was
Yeah.
looking for you all week,
Uh-huh.
and this is the first time in my 7 years here that Lowell Grissom didn't show up here,
Yeah.
and Lowell's pushing 90 years old.
He still looks and sounds great. I saw him last July,
Good.
and he's a spry, wonderful person. And I remember in the 1997 ceremony, which I was honored to be the host of, and my then fiance was out in the audience, and she could hear these 2 old veterans talk to each other. And when Lowell was speaking for the Grissom family, they leaned back and said to each other, "Sure looks and sounds like Gus." And he's just a real national treasure.
Yes, I talked to Scott. I didn't talk to Mark, who was out there, but he said his uncle's doing fine and just getting up there in the years. So, tell us a little bit about this. This is a photograph I took,
Mm-hmm.
and
I thought it was very well done. If you'll notice the lighting, they had some very specific accent lighting. That's not like standard facility lighting. And I thought that the launch stand, the bluish hues, they evoke the kind of the transition between a dark blue sky and the blackness of outer space. I thought that was very nice.
Mhm.
And the reddish hues that are in the image and were on the structure suggest the fire of the rocket engine. So it was a very nice piece of design. Because of course the concrete is concrete, and even though it has rusted through in some places, you see the remainder of the old uh, metal plates and the deluge ring and so on. So they have some stains to it, but it looked very, very nice in that context.
Above your head there, the deluge
Yes.
ring. Is that what you're
Yes.
Marty has a picture of that. It looks
Mhm.
like there is a human figure up there in that deluge ring. It's a rusty something, right, Marty? It's rusted away. Right above Bob's head is the plaque that we're going to see here
Oh yes.
at the end there to here. Uh, we talked about it during the week some, but we can talk about it again. That's Nick Thomas, who did such a class job of being the master of ceremonies. But they bring out this flag. These two military men bring a flag out, and um, in a triangle, tightly wound triangle, and tediously over the next 10 minutes, tell everybody what they do.
Well, do you want to call up my photo of that from my angle? Shows that. Well, as we're going through them, this is Gus's sons. Scott on the
I
left.
just got 3 or 4 pictures for you. Is that
Okay.
did I omit some?
I thought they were there in the in what I uploaded. Maybe they didn't come across. But in any case, the families of the astronauts depicted there are Scott and Mark Grissom received plaques in honor of their father, and also Chaffee and White as well. And there to the left is Nick Thomas, the master of ceremonies, who's done a very good job with that. But the flag pullers, they precisely and crisply unfolded the flag to its full extent, and then held it out. And after a suitable presentation, they then reversed that process and folded it, such as many people have seen. I saw when my father, who was a veteran of the Army Medical Corps, was buried, was then folded up into the triangular shape, and all with the solemnity and dignity and respect that are accorded to all of our veterans.
White gloves, you know.
Yes.
Marty had a good comment. Kind of wish it was elevated so people in the back seated
Yes.
have a hard time maybe seeing what's going on, and they're all going in there. But really a beautiful look at the sunset. Well, it's sunset behind us here. And there's them receiving that. There's Nick Thomas on the left there.
And there were several speakers. They had speakers from NASA, the Space Force, the U.S. Navy, and all of them spoke very eloquently about the talent, the bravery, and dedication of the Apollo 1 crew. And I thought it was a very fitting time. It was a nice mixture of solemnity, because at the epicenter of this whole thing is disaster. But it also has introduced me to all these wonderful people, and lots of others have networked through this, and it really does point with hope toward the future. So as Gene Cernan said at the 1997 ceremony, they're on the highest flight of their career. Grissom, White, and Chaffee worked and hard, trained, and dreamed of leaving the Earth from that spot, and they actually did.
Very, very, very moving. The whole thing, and that's a good way to put it there, Bob. Of course, Nick Thomas said we're all facing him in this glorious sunsets going on behind us, and he said, why don't you just all take a minute and turn around, because I hadn't glanced behind me, and when I did, I'm going, holy smoke, look at this gorgeous sunset behind us there that you captured. They're very pretty there.
That's right.
And
it was almost like the heavens themselves were bestowing their blessing on us.
It seems like every year that I've been there, there's been a nice sunset like that. And then we had the moonrise in 2021. It was really cool. So
a few years there was one that was like being in a tropical storm. It was 20, 30 knot winds, and so one at a time one of us just got off the bus just to stand there for a moment and make our respects, and then get back on again.
Oh, really?
So sometimes the weather is an adversary rather than an ally.
Again, the Astronaut Memorial Foundation orchestrated this for they gave a public call out to people that get their emails, and I'd say about 100 people showed up there in 2 buses, and that was nice on there. So, and then out there, Bob Castro, you know the story behind
yeah.
why this plaque is there.
Yes, the Johnny Johnson introduced me when I told him why my mom and I had come down for the 25th anniversary to pay our respects to Grissom, White, and Chaffee, because Bob Special, the space photographer, had taken the last photos of the crew as they got in the spacecraft. And I was so moved by that, listening to what a Civil War soldier talking about Gettysburg must have been like. Well, Johnny said, well, there's this young fellow that comes out here every year for that same purpose. You ought to hang around and meet him. And so I met MarQ Pinchel, who is a civilian in Orlando, Florida, and no official connection with the space program, but he, like all of us, was a great supporter of it. And we noticed that there at the time was no plaque or monument or marker or memorial. So he took it upon himself to craft that, and his stepfather helped to pay for a bronze plaque to be cast and put on the remains of the launch stand. And there it is to this day. And it's a very moving tribute. He dedicated it to as a living memorial to the lives of the crew, not just to mark the tragedy, which it is, but the ideals for which they lived, and that's part of what's in his verbiage.
A beautiful, beautiful one, and then there's the other plaque out there too. So,
Yes.
Bob, thank you for sharing insight into preserving film, what you've done for our museum. You've saved some history that we put up there that might just be a brittled old Slim Jim back in
Yes.
if you hadn't done that for us.
Yes.
Thank you all for watching today. Steve Jokem's also he's a patriot like me. The red, white, and blues also, national colors out there shining on that
That's right.
pad, and it is a privilege to see it and be out there. And when I was out there this year, I just kept looking up and envisioning that Saturn 1B up there.
That's right. I did too for the '94 ceremony. And,
yeah.
And that photo of me doing that while my mom was looking down and MarQ was looking level, that's in Roland Miller's book. That's in the Abandoned Place book. I didn't realize he was doing it.
Oh, really?
But in looking up at what they aspired to, something did occur to me this year that for the first time, with all the wonderful activity we have with these new space companies of going into space more frequently and with civilian astronauts, as it were. I wonder if the new space companies should stay away from late January, early February, because unfortunately all our manned space disasters have been in that calendar week, or whether at the appropriate time, in the fullness of time, they should attempt to launch during that time period to break the curse. And I don't know which is the correct way to do that. So that occurred to me this year. So it's up to them.
Something that occurred to me while we're talking here is the Hollywood movie Fly Me to the Moon that Scarlett Johansson and Tatum Channing starred in it. Did you see that movie?
No, but Lowell did make mention that he attended either the premiere or something of that nature, and he said he was honored by the fact that they had a section where they were paying tribute to Apollo 1.
They did, but it was fun and far-fetched.
Yeah.
Was my review.
Yes.
Because as the launch director, Tatum Channing had a garden out there at Pad 34 that he would drive out there and tend a flower garden to combat his angst for his friends losing their lives out there. And there was some thought that this structure of pad that's left of Pad 34 would become a iconic pilgrimage for Hollywood people that like that movie.
Yes.
But it really hasn't. It really didn't pan out this year like that.
Some people remember the film from the '90s called Armageddon, and they shot out at Complex 34, and they shot the other plaque that is on the remains of the launch stand.
Right.
So it has been featured in
we shot that
Hollywood
ad
film.
Astra per Astra.
Yes,
we
exactly.
Showed that. So. Well, thank you all for watching. Marty, why don't you say thank you to our wonderful friends, including a Tasmanian.
Oh, my goodness. So we have Mitch Rothman, Colin.
You don't know Mitch? You'll know Mitch. Mitch is U.S. is NASA manned space, but Mitch is
Okay.
now a great partner of our museum.
Oh, okay. Colin Vandemark from Tasmania. Hello, Colin, on the other side of the world. Uh, Dean Babcock, Carlton Bailey, Bob Mayram, Doug Forrest, Bill Whiting, Robert Law, Tom Usiak, Gary Jarrell, Elena, have to help me with that, Eo Hikara,
Yep.
Dave Stange,
Ed Hikara. Yep. S.A. behind her name.
and Chris Callie.
Yep. The
Uh,
great artist Chris Callie.
Callie.
Dave Stange you got right there. Good for
Yeah.
you there. He's up in Macomb, Michigan.
Okay.
And we're not, thank God. It's gotten pretty warm today.
Well, but
I wish I'd wore shorts, Marty, this afternoon.
yeah.
Marty did, see? So back to Florida weather here. Bob, thank you so much.
Certainly, Mark.
You're one of the first people that I met here at the museum that was one of our outsiders that gave us a lot of support, and you know, we miss Karen an awful lot. I know you do. She was a wonderful woman, and
She and my wife were great friends, and I imagine them palling around in heaven.
yeah, we're talking about you newcomers, our executive director Karen Conklin, who died in August of lung cancer after spending 20 years with this nonprofit, and we had to take two people to replace her, Gabriel and me, to do things around here. So we love you. The memory of Karen Conklin will always live in this museum, and it's thanks to people like you that this museum keeps thriving. So thank you all. Tomorrow we will have the one and only Carlton Bailey, and he'll be talking about his first experience 39 years ago as his first rocket launch at Kennedy Space Center was the fateful Challenger launch. Wow. And CB has a couple personal stories that you will not want to miss, and we look forward to that tomorrow. So, Marty, thank you for a good job. Thank you so much, Bob.
Yes, Mark.
Again, you're a great friend, and thank you all for watching here at the American Space Museum, coming to you from downtown Titusville, just 9 miles from those noisy rockets that they're launching every 4 days at least here. So until next time, I'm Mark Marquette saying, I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.